Welcome to the World Nomads Podcast, delivered by World Nomads, the travel lifestyle and insurance brand. It's not your usual travel podcast. It's everything for the adventurous, independent traveler.
Yes, mariachi music, Phil, the sound of Mexico. Couldn't do it without that. The destination we're featuring in this episode of the World Nomads Podcast, and it celebrates the launch of the World Nomads Mexico Guide.
From lounging or partying on its beautiful beaches to exploring ancient Mayan ruins, Mexico is definitely an alluring destination, and it is also hugely popular. Outside the Caribbean, it's the second most popular destination for Americans to visit, you know?
Yep. Cool art, top-notch food, the music, sand, sun, sea, mariachi bands. What's not to love? We'll explore the Sea of Cortez in this episode, known as the Aquarium of the World, the cuisine, and a dose of jungle diarrhea, which is not a great segue for our first chat with our boss about the guide.
Yeah, indeed, Kim, our Mexico Guide. And look, we've actually done a bit of a change in direction with these. This is our 22nd or 23rd travel guide that World Nomads has published. But we've taken a bit of a new direction because we're trying to do something a little bit different with World Nomads. I know people love what we do. We're trying to do it better. But I thought we'd find out about why we're trying to do all this and exactly what we're trying to do by speaking to our boss, General Manager Chris Noble. G'day.
Hello, Phil. Hello, Kim.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is, I was going to say popping your cherry. This is your first time joining us.
I know. I have complained for several months that my dulcet tones have yet to be recorded, so I'm very glad that finally I get a chance to chat to you guys.
Mate, look, just talk to us, all right, because we've had a bit of a change in direction. So now we're all this new guide, and it looks fantastic and it reads beautifully because we've switched to the first person. We're talking, we've got people who are good travel writers and they're explaining a destination through their own experiences. But just tell me why we're doing that. What's the philosophy behind that?
Yeah, look, I think it's been one of those things over the years that both as a traveller, and I think that's the thing about World Nomads, that, we are World Nomads, and pretty much everything I think we've produced over the years has been done through the lens of, does it help us? Does it support us individually as travellers as well? And I think for many years when you look at, and there's some fantastic travel writing out there and wonderful publications, and they give you fantastic tips and hints on where to go and what to see. And I think from my perspective, and I don't know, maybe it's just me getting older, but I generally get moved by understanding what a travel writer felt when they were in a place. What motivated them? What were the experiences they had, and how did they reflect upon them? And it's always been that type of writing that I've loved, and I know a lot of us within the business have loved as well. So yes, you can get those great, tips. This is where you need to go and what you need to do. And I think that, there's certainly an element of that woven into it. But I was really keen, and our team was very keen to understand, what did that person feel at the time? Why was it such an amazing experience? What did they get from it? What did it mean to them as an individual? Because I think as travellers, we all have completely different motivations when we make a decision to travel to a place. And it's not always just about being able to stand in front of something and pull a selfie and go, I was here. For a lot of us, I think it's very much, we're seeking something. We're looking to understand a place and understand ourselves at the same time. So I thought this, and the team thought this would be a better opportunity to try and explore some of those themes and see whether we could get under the skin of a place through that individual, through that writer, and really understand what did they feel when they were going through it. And that's something that I can connect to, something that I'm searching for.
Picked a great destination to do it with, Mexico, where nomads go.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few countries in the world that are possibly as misunderstood as Mexico is. It's copped a lot of bad press over the years, but it really is an amazing place and it's an amazing destination. And I think one of the other things that's key to the approach that we're trying to take is, I know personally for me very much, the way in which the way that I travel now has changed, in that I seek out those people on the ground. I seek out local people to really give me a better understanding and a better sense of what's going on, and not just take that sort of that third-person view of a place that you sort of wander into and you get a perception. But really, I think we all, those fantastic trips, those trips that you have that you remember that you stick with you for years, are generally around the experiences that you've shared. Now whether that's, with someone or a friend or a loved one, but a lot of the time it's when you share that experience with someone that actually lives on the ground, and can really give you an insight into their culture and their way of life that you just can't get either necessarily through a guidebook or by just sort of standing on the outside. And I think that's ultimately what, this new approach tries to do, is to get our riders connected to people on the ground and really start to give people a sort of an inside-out view of a destination. So all those preconceived views that you have and any of those stereotypes of a place sort of wash away when you really get to the heart of it and understand why it is that that people are, so proud to live in Mexico and so proud of their culture and their history. It just gives you that further desire to want to go and experience that. And that is, for me, that is the beauty of travel, is getting on the ground and meeting people and really understanding the destination you're in.
One last question, and it's a leading question. Everything that you've just said
Have I got a job for 2019?
Yeah, can I keep my job? It's the leading question. You'll know where I'm going. All those things that you've just described that you can do as a world nomad, that's not something that you can normally do with lots of other brands.
There are amazing brands that do amazing things in the world, but, as I say to people within the team, you can't live and die an Apple, you can't live and die a Red Bull, but you can live and die a world nomad. That's core to who we are. It's just part of our fabric. It's part of our DNA. And we love the fact that so many other people in the world sort of share that vision and purpose. So it's been a great ride and long may it continue.
Agree with that totally.
Yeah, it's great. Another tattoo for you, Phil. You can't die an Apple, you can't die a Red Bull, but you can die a world nomad. It's awesome, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All the best.
Cheers, Chris. Well, let's kick off by addressing the elephant in the room. Phil, I know it's something you're really passionate about, safety in Mexico. You get quite frustrated when people say it's not safe.
No. Yes. I do get very, very frustrated, and it is generally a pretty safe destination.
Well, we have all read about the gang and drug-related violence. In fact, when you tune into Netflix, all the shows, or pretty much all the shows on Netflix, are about that.
Yeah, well, that Narco series is a lot to blame for that sort of attitude that people have. Great TV, but,
Come to the defence of Mexico. Well, who better to give us an idea of just how safe Mexico is but a local? And you caught up with Ruben from Mundo Joven?
Yep, Mundo Joven.
At a conference in Scotland last year.
I was raised and born in Mexico 33 years ago, and I've been traveling around the world. I've been in this industry for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I've been always next to this story about and listening all the time when where are you from? Mexico. And immediately, it's dangerous. How do you survive? And I don't know, people immediately is like feeling that I'm landing in Damascus probably every time that I get home. But it's not like that. Of course there's a problem. Of course I will be lying to you if I don't consider that we have a problem. We have a big drug problem, probably since, I don't know, since ever, since and bigger and bigger and bigger in the last 20 years, or it was more obvious in the last 20 years. Yeah. And it's really simple to understand. We have a big neighbor with a big demand.
Yep.
And we are a big producer. So in order to exist, any conflict you need to have two parts.
Yep.
Otherwise, couldn't be just one. I think the Mexico first big problem is we have a terrible PR condition in terms of the news. You can see the worst president ever history that we have is right now. Thank God is gone, this administration. Considering so many facts, considering corruption things that we've been involved. Terrible.
But it's pretty simple to say that there are lots of places which are fine, but there are some places which are not.
Correct.
So it's very localised in a way. So if I was to go to Mexico, how would I find out the information about what are the safe places to go and the not safe places to avoid?
Border is always the hot spot, not in the right way. I mean, because the geographically position next to the U.S. border is where probably you're going to get the biggest conflicts.
Yep.
Cause natural conditions of these people trying to get all this stuff into the country. And then about the cities or about the destinations, the most demand destination, which is Mexico City, Cancun, or all the other beach destinations, you're going to have these, how do I say, possible problems.
Yeah.
Because all the interaction there is involved around. I mean, there's always people looking for this demand, and there's always people having this offer. So if you are involved or you are looking after this, and you are looking after that kind of action,
you will get into trouble.
You will get into trouble. But that's something that is going to happen in Mexico or anywhere else.
All right, tell me about your favourite parts of Mexico. Which part of your country do you love the most?
I love my city. I love Mexico City. Then my second favorite place of Mexico is Chiapas, which is in the south,
yes,
southeast Mexico. They have a beautiful landscape. It's green, a lot of community and local community people, and they have beautiful green zones, and it's a mix between jungle and a lot of art and a lot of traditions. And all the zones around, for me, is one of the most beautiful parts of Mexico, next to Yucatan. Well, close to Yucatan. Yucatan, as well, for me is one of my favorite places, and is my grandma hometown, which obviously put it in the hot part of the list.
Indeed. Well, look, Mexico City has changed a lot over the medium term. It was once not a very nice place to go. So what's changed there? How did it become such a great destination? How did it become a hot spot?
It's been a lot of investment in the city in the last 10 years, I will say. Much more efficient communication and PR. A lot of big brands, hotels, and big luxury brands around the city. And developing. I mean, you feel comfort when you're next to the city or walking around the city, and there's so many things to do and so many things to see around.
Last question. I want you to tell me a secret spot in Mexico City. If I was to visit there, where would you send me that's not the usual?
My secret spot in Mexico. San Angel. For me, San Angel is one of the most known, well, and amazing neighborhoods that perfectly shows you how used to be the real Mexico City. So get lost in San Angel, take a look about the houses, and you're gonna know exactly how is Mexico and how is Mexico City.
Look, Mundo Joven is an educational travel agency aimed at all types of travellers, especially first-timers, who are guided step-by-step in their process to go abroad to study. All the links in the show notes.
Yeah, plus our very own safety guide too for Mexico. We'll put that there as well. Yep. Now, Cassandra runs Escaping NY. It offers group tours. I really like this because when you hear the term group tour...
Yeah, I've turned off already.
Yeah, no, don't, please, because she does group tours for people who don't do group tours. And she helps solo travellers plan their own adventures, and Cassandra has spent a lot of time in Mexico.
So I started in Baja California, and I did a whale watching road trip all along that peninsula, camping and stopping at different locations to see whales. And I then completed my scuba diving certification in Baja California. And then I went to Playa del Carmen about 2 years later and did my advanced scuba diving certification there.
So what's scuba diving like in that area?
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. I'll say in Playa del Carmen, it's one of the best places in the world. You see turtles, you see large fish, you see algae, you see, I saw a gigantic eel that apparently just lives in this shipwreck. And I was so surprised to find him, and then was told after the dive that he's just always there every single day waiting for divers to come down and say hi.
When you were in Baja California, you then hitchhiked with a couch surfing friend.
I did. So I met her actually the previous year in Tijuana. She lives in Tijuana. And she wrote me and she said, I go to see the whales every winter. Would you like to go with me? And so I did. I flew back to San Diego, and then I crossed the border into Tijuana, and we made a plan to go down the border. And we actually found another couch surfer to go with us. And he drove for the first couple of days, which was really nice because when she went to pick up her tent, we realized that there were no poles in the tent. So we would have been into for a terrible surprise when we went to go set up the tent at night. And when he had to go back up to Tijuana, we hitchhiked. We hitchhiked the whole way down the peninsula with a lot of Canadian retired couples who I would learn vacation in Baja California, Mexico every winter. And there's like these massive RV camps and lots all along the peninsula. So they would drive us to wherever they were going. We would spend the night, and then we would find someone to take us the next stretch.
So jumping in with mum and dad or grandma and grandpa seems a lot safer than what I was envisaging.
Yeah, it was. It was very safe. And we did have other offers, and we used our best judgment as two single women. There were offers we got an offer from a truck with 3 men in the front, and we decided they might be very nice, but we didn't think that was the best option for us. So we let that pass. And at one point we had a Mexican couple, a male and a female, probably in their 30s, that were driving on a short vacation they took. And so they gave us a ride to one of the cities as well. And we ended up staying at their hotel that night just because we got in too late to try to find any accommodations.
We're going to chat about safety in Mexico later in the podcast, but generally, did you feel safe?
Yes, 100%. I've been in Mexico at least a dozen times. I've traveled all over the country, and I've always felt extremely, extremely safe there. I mean, there are areas I won't go to, like around the border, and there are pockets of violence, and that violence is real, but it's in very specific places for the most part, and so it can be avoided.
Now, you mentioned nasty surprises. Jungle diarrhea.
Oh, wow.
And why I'm so interested in this is that Phil and I are pretty sure we're going to have to do an episode on, pooping around the world, because it's kind of one of those things that happens to everyone, but no one talks about it.
Oh, I talk about it. I send out a monthly adventure newsletter that it talks about my personal adventures and, upcoming group trips that I lead and travel tips and everything. And one of them that I sent out was jungle diarrhea in Mexico. And one of my mentors was like, you can't use that as the title. I was like, oh, yes, I can. Like, people want to know. And if they don't, like, they shouldn't subscribe to my newsletter because I want to keep it real and let them know, like, what's going on. It's a part of travel. It's a part of travel. Like, unless you're just going to stay in your house for the rest of your life. I've gotten sick at restaurants in New York City and across, the countries. So this particularly awful bout of the jungle diarrhea happened when I was going on a road trip with a friend of mine, Pedro, who is a taxi driver in Mexico City, and we drive his taxi all over the country on road trips. And we were going through San Luis Potosí, and we stopped in a small town because we were tired, and we went to a little street fair, and the food was good. And Pedro had me sample his drink. It was a sweetened tamarind water. I was like, man, this is good. I should get my own. And I did. I was like, man, this is really good. I should get another. And I had another. And the next morning, I woke up just sweating. And I'm like, isn't it hot in here? And he's like, no, it's not. And I sat up and I was dizzy and it was really bad, but we had hiking to do that afternoon. So we went hiking and we had hiking the next day through these ancient ruins in the middle of the jungle. And I think it was in the 80s or the 90s that day. It felt like just boiling. It felt like my blood was boiling, hiking through these mountains, no bathrooms in sight. At night, we were camping, and we found this really cool campground with teepees. So, we had this nice teepee, but then I had to climb out of it and, run to the bathroom, which seemed like it was, a kilometer away. I was grateful for it.
So any accidents, or did you make it to the loo every time?
I did make it every time. I'm surprised because the next campsite we went to, I had to cross a river. I had to hop over rocks to get to the other side of the campsite to get to the bathroom. But I was so grateful that there were lights and there was toilet paper. And eventually, a couple days later, I was able to do this waterfall jumping tour in San Luis Potosí, Mexico, with no accidents, thank goodness. That would have been interesting for some underwater GoPro filming. That would have been the video to go viral. I know every travel blogger and every business person wants some viral video. That would be the viral video that I would be subjected to.
So tell us about this friend in Mexico that is a taxi driver, and you drive the taxi around the country.
I also met him on Couchsurfing. I met him 10 years ago, and I've been talking about Couchsurfing for years, and I've gotten so many more questions recently about it. I recently hosted a guy from Iraq, and I want to do some more writing about that. But I met him in Mexico City, and he had responded to, there was a dancing group, and I dance salsa, and so he wrote me in that group and said, hey, I can't host you at my house, but I'm a driver. If you need, I can pick you up from the airport and take you to wherever you're going to be staying. I said, oh, that works out great. And so we ended up hanging out, and I went down there 2 years later, and we met up again, and we decided to take a day trip to Puebla, which is 2 hours from Mexico City. It was just going to be a quick day trip, go there, come back. And on the way, he says, hey, what do you think about spending the night in Puebla and then driving another 6 hours to Oaxaca in the morning? I thought, that sounds like fun. It also sounds like something we should have planned for before we left Mexico City, because we don't have our clothing, our toothbrush, or anything. But it sounds like fun. And when we got to Puebla, we went to the internet cafe and we posted on there, and we actually found some hosts that were going to take a bus to Oaxaca the next day. And so they let us stay with them. They had a spare bedroom, and we all drove in his taxi to Oaxaca, had a great time. And then we've had a bunch of adventures since then in his taxi. And now he's the taxi driver on my group tours to Mexico. And he has a million stories to tell on his own.
Now, Cassandra's laugh alone would be enough for me to join her travelling. She's great fun. Links in show notes. And to avoid jungle diarrhea, she suggests making sure the water is filtered, which makes sense, but it's not often hard. It's not often that easy.
Easy to do in small towns.
Yeah. No. So she carries a water bottle with a filter, and the brand that she recommends is Grey. What's travel news?
Okay, well, it looks like one of Europe's longest-running parties is about to come to an end. The city of Prague, where, beer's cheaper than water there,
I've been to Prague, and I drank Slivovitz, not beer.
Oh, my God, how was the hangover? Oh, that stuff's rocket fuel.
It's deadly, isn't it?
It's shocking.
Deadly.
But look, and drug possession is only a misdemeanor in Prague as well. So, it makes it the ultimate party town. But locals have got sick of waking up with a hangover and having to clean up after the 20 million guests who come there every year. So after years of complaints about noise and disturbance, the residents of the old city are being heard at last. The city has appointed a night mayor to address their concerns. Paris has done it as well. New York's done it. Moving on, I think we've discussed the airfare hack known as Hidden City tickets before. You book a flight to a less popular destination, which is therefore a cheaper ticket, but you get off on a stopover at the more popular destination. But the airlines are cracking down on this because they claim it deprives them of thousands of dollars. Lufthansa is the latest airline to take a stand, and they're suing a passenger who booked a Seattle to Oslo flight but got off at the stopover in Frankfurt and then bought a separate airline ticket to his home in the city of Berlin. He saved a little over 2,000 euros by doing that. That's exactly how much Lufthansa are going to sue him for.
Well, how could that be successful?
Suing? Well, that's the whole point.
On those grounds,
I know.
seriously. Someone's just been a bit clever.
Yeah, but now but there's a site that will find these tickets for you called Skiplagged. And so they're going, now it's institutionalised. It used to be a few people knew about it and it was a small hole in a big bucket and they didn't worry about it. But now it's like, a gaping hole in a damn wall. There's so many people are taking advantage of it. Whether they are actually, they claim that you've actually broken the conditions that you've agreed to on your ticket. And you're also depriving another passenger of a seat because an empty seat goes on. Okay, one last one. We got time for one last one?
Go for it.
A company that helps European travellers access compensation for delayed flights is predicting 2019 will be a horror year, especially for UK travellers. AirHelp is predicting that infrastructure problems and Brexit could cause as many as 250,000 flight departure disruptions throughout 2019, mostly for the Brits. They're calling on airlines and airports to get it together on infrastructure and on, what they're going to do about post-Brexit and do more to protect passengers' rights. So stand by for a bit of disruption.
If Brexit goes ahead.
Who knows?
Exactly. I do know that Claire Sturziker has a blog. Thanks for the news.
Pleasure.
It was great.
I'm here every week.
She has a blog, Tales of a Backpacker. She also has her very own backpacking guide to Mexico, which we will share in show notes. And she's a big fan of the place as a destination, having spent months there.
I loved it. I didn't really have much expectations of Mexico City, to be honest, because, I'd heard all the stories that it's big and it's dangerous, it's dirty and polluted. But actually that wasn't my experience at all. I was in a really nice area of the city, a place called Roma. And, it was like leafy avenues and there's loads of cool bars and restaurants. And I had a whale of a time. I really didn't want to leave, actually. I had originally only planned to be there for like a month. And I just liked it so much. I decided to stay, as long as I could.
So give me 4 reasons you decided to stay for 4 months.
The food. But Mexican food is ridiculously good. The street food actually is amazing. You can buy sort of 3 tacos for like $1. And it's really, really good. The people, I actually found the people really friendly, kind and open. Again, sort of not really what I'd expected from Mexico, given all the stories I'd heard. What else? The culture. I was actually really amazed by how many museums there are in Mexico City. Like, apparently there's only Paris that has more museums than Mexico City. So there's so much to learn in Mexico. There's an anthropology museum that's absolutely incredible. It's huge and it has exhibition halls of every pre-Columbian civilization in Mexico. They have this, they call it the Aztec Sunstone, this huge, massive stone it's about like 3.5 meters across, and apparently it weighs over 20 tons, and it's got amazing carvings on it. And they don't really know what it was used for, but they think it might have been like a calendar or for astrological purposes. But I mean, that was just incredible for me to see that, and considering how long it had been there for, and that they'd actually designed this thing. I was just blown away by it. So hang on, that's 3 things. What else? 4 things. Just being somewhere that was it was just fun. There's a square in Mexico City called Plaza Garibaldi, and you can go there, and there's mariachi bands playing everywhere. They can serenade you. There's an area called Xochimilco, which is where you can go on a boat, like a really colourful boat around all these canals. And if you go on a weekend or on a holiday, it's just a massive party, and all these boats are filled with people drinking all their beers and singing, and there's mariachi boats that come alongside and like serenade you, and there's little boats that come past they're selling like tacos in the little corn on the cob, and oh god, I just loved it, everything about it really. I just really, really enjoyed it, and like I said, because my expectations were pretty much zero, it just totally blew me away. Perfect. But can you expand on what you do? Because it isn't just Mexico. Yeah, no, it's not just Mexico. I decided, it was about 3 years ago now, I was working in Spain, and I couldn't take an office job anymore, so I decided to quit my job and go travelling. And I went around South America it was about 10 months that I was backpacking around South America. And I loved it, and when I came back after that, it was only supposed to be a sort of once-in-a-lifetime trip, and when I came back, the thought of working in an office then was just awful. So yeah, I decided to work a lot harder on the blog. So yeah, Tales of a Backpacker, it's solo female travel. I travel all around by myself, budget travel, but still spending money on unique experiences. Because I think if you're going to travel and there's something incredible that you can't do anywhere else in the world, that's worth spending a little bit of money on if you can. And I just want to sort of inspire people to take the plunge and do it. When I quit my job, there's so many people that said to me, "Oh, I wish I could do what you're doing." And obviously if you've got a family and mortgage and stuff, it's a lot harder. But I think, life is short. You should just take the plunge, and if you can, then just do it. Which is great. But the big question, though, Claire, is you must have had some money in your pocket before you headed off. The first trip that I went on, this 10-month adventure to South America, I actually had some inheritance from my grandparents when they passed away. Before I went, I was working 2 jobs, and so I was saving up everything I could for that. But then when I was out there, I was volunteering in hostels and stuff like that, and staying in hostels. I'm not spending very much money. And that is good to hear, considering Claire's mission, Phil, is to share with you the very best of a destination without breaking the bank. Good. Okay, Tim Neville is a travel writer, and we featured him in previous podcasts. He's a great bloke to have a chat to. He went kayaking in Baja's Loreto Bay. Jacques Cousteau called Mexico's Sea of Cortez the world's aquarium.
Yeah, when I found out he said that, I thought, man, that is just absolutely perfect. It was my first trip to that part of Mexico, and I am just dying to go back. It's just, I just can't describe just what a wonderful feeling it was to go down there, especially when the weather up here in Oregon, where I live, is not so great. To go down there and have just wonderful temperatures and so on. Now, when we first arrived, of course, the weather wasn't so great, but it's Mexico. It's always going to be, it's always going to be better than where you are. And so, at least generally speaking, I would say. So to jump into a place with just crystal clear water, just spectacular scenery, it's very desert, very arid, and then this cool, refreshing water, so the contrasts are just wonderful. And then you pack in all this wildlife, and you think, wow, there's no place else I'd rather be right now.
Now, you saw a marlin. I can't imagine what that would be like to see a marlin swimming when you're not actually, fishing for one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's the first one I had seen, not mounted on a wall in a seafood restaurant. So, I couldn't believe it. I'm just paddling along and look down, and it's kind of a disturbing feeling when you can, it's almost like your body can sense there's something there before you really realize something's there. And something just looked a little different down underneath the boat. And all of a sudden I realized it was moving. And then I realized, oh my gosh, this is a giant fish. And I really couldn't tell what it was, even though it was probably maybe 4 feet below me, something like that, until it turned. And when it turned, the sunlight hit its sides, and then it just lit up like an alien spaceship or something. Just blue electric light, and then poof, it was gone. So that was definitely a highlight for me. It's funny. There's so many turtles and birds and things like that you begin to get a little bit used to it, let's say. So to have something like a marlin go by, which was still the only one I've ever seen, pretty special, something I won't forget, that's for sure.
Does it live up to Jacques Cousteau's theory that it's the world's aquarium?
Well, I'm no marine biologist, but it's just the average guy who likes to go down there and go kayaking. It is certainly one of the more spectacular places you can go. See tons and tons of wildlife. There's great places to go snorkeling. We would stop off into these little coves. That's the fun thing, right, about kayaking, is that not only do you get to sort of ride in your backpack, let's say, so you don't have to carry anything. It's all in your boat. But then you get to use it to go explore these fun little nooks and crannies that are otherwise pretty difficult to get to. So we could pull into these little coves, beach the kayaks, and then swap out for snorkel gear and go play around with the fish for a little while.
You described that it goes kind of from, this arid desert feel into this beautiful crystal clear water. But you also, in the story that you wrote, talk about some, charming little seaside towns. How does it all connect?
Yeah, so it's definitely a mix of the two. And, where you start off there, there's several places you can start, but there in Loreto, it's just a wonderful little town. Just that whole portion of Mexico. I think Mexico's so big and diverse, but that particular area of Mexico, the Baja Peninsula, just has this unbelievably chill vibe to it. It's like, we've got this great weather, we've got these great beaches and all these animals and awesome food. It's like, why worry? So everybody's just seems naturally kind of happy and relaxed, and so you can go hang out in these sidewalk cafes, sidewalk restaurants, and have fish tacos or margaritas, whatever it is that you want, and just really shed some of the daily stress, I guess, that you have in your normal life. But at the same time, it's culturally fascinating and historically so rich. You've got to remember that these areas have been settled long before by Europeans, obviously, is what I'm talking about. Before anything where I live. So you have these old missions. You have these towns are old. You have just this very, very colorful culture, and it just permeates everything. So to have both this wonderful, let's call it urban vibe, and then this wonderful natural vibe, you put those two together, and man, it's paradise. It's right there on our doorstep. It's so wonderful, fascinating culturally. It's the food. You need no excuse to go. It's right there. So yeah, I plan to spend a lot more time down there for sure.
Well, Phil, it's not fair to say we've left the best until last, but we cannot have an episode on Mexico and not explore the food.
Absolutely. I think Mexican food sometimes has a bad reputation. I've heard it described as pre-masticated food, but I think that's a Western version, and I'm aware that there is an entire different Mexican cuisine.
We're about to find that out. Who better to do that with than Kendall Hill? He's an Australian journalist. He specialises in travel, food and people features, but he's also the author of best-selling recipe book Coast, and he contributes to Gourmet Pilgrims Spain and Mexico volumes. So I'm guessing, Kendall, you know what you're talking about when it comes to Mexican cuisine.
Kim, I wouldn't ever profess to be an expert in Mexican cuisine because you'd need a couple of lifetimes, I think, to get across everything that's involved there. But I've eaten quite a bit and travelled around quite a bit for the Gourmet Pilgrim book, as you said. So I know something about it, yeah.
Phil seemed to sum it up as pre-masticated food.
Well, that's sort of refried beans, Tex-Mex stuff that you get in cheap chain outlets. That sort of stuff I'm talking about is not proper Mexican food, is it?
No, it's not. And talking from an Australian perspective, we don't get great Mexican food here. We think it's just a sort of a hot mess of beans and cheese. But in Mexico itself, it's so diverse. It's not. I mean, Mexican cuisine is actually an amalgam of all sorts of different influences. not least the Spanish, when they invaded, they brought pork and the sort of common meats that we're aware of that Mexico didn't have beforehand. And then you've had waves of immigrants since then, including Korean and Lebanese, and they all bring their own influences. But underpinning that is this sort of treasury of ancestral customs that inform the way Mexican cuisine is prepared and the way it's developed. But also they have the most incredible ingredients in Mexico. Avocados come from there, chocolate comes from there, chilies, beans, tomatoes, pumpkin, all these incredible ingredients that we couldn't imagine living without tomatoes, for example, but these are all Mexican. So to dismiss it as, for anyone to dismiss Mexican cuisine shows a sort of a lack of understanding of how much that those United States of Mexico have brought to the world, in terms of our food treasury.
I think you just named all of my favourite foods then.
Oh, yeah, yum.
Well, any country that gives you chocolate, it's got to be. There's some debate now. It might have come from sort of further south in Latin America, but certainly the Mayans were one of the first ones to sort of be able to turn those beans into something delicious to drink.
Okay, I'm going to impress you here, both of you, probably more so Kendall. When I cook a chili con carne, I put chocolate in it.
Ah, interesting. That's mole, which is it's the staple sort of source of high Mexican cuisine, I'd say, because it takes a long time to prepare, 24 hours or more, and often has more than 30 ingredients. But that often has chocolate in, so you're on the right track, Kim. I think
Thank you.
Putting a bit of chocolate in, a bit of you'd want the sun-dried chilies as well, and that not fresh, I think, to give it sort of a more smoky flavour too.
Okay, no, I do use the fresh, so I'll take on board that advice.
And do you spend 24 hours preparing it, Kim?
It's 12 hours slow
12
cooked.
hours, okay.
It's
All right.
12 hours slow cook. I put the time in. Speaking of avocados, I can't imagine what a guacamole dip in Mexico would taste like compared to what we whip up ourselves in our kitchen based on the recipes that we're given, or even in some of the restaurants. Is there a difference?
Yeah. Look, I think there is, in the same way that there's a difference in a lot of countries with their native cuisines when you go there and eat them. It's got a lot to do with the freshness. And, guacamole is never pre-prepared in Mexico. It's always made fresh. So it's the zinginess of the sort of onion and tomato and the lime juice and the avocado all together. And they do. I mean, avocados come from there, but in Michoacan, one of the states in Mexico, they say they're the best avocados in the world. So it's that quality of ingredients that all hails from this place. So I think that does make a difference. The freshness, but also the fact that these ingredients are endemic to the place. So they probably turn out better there than they do anywhere else. And that you'll see across all sorts of dishes in Mexico. It may seem very simple. Sylvia mentioned earlier about beans and cheese and what have you, but there are myriad different ways of preparing beans, and so many different types of cheese that they make in Mexico. And they're just two of the many ingredients they have. So you can travel around Mexico and you could have similar dish in each place, but it will never taste the same, and you'll be, it's just a series. For me, when I've been there, it's just been a series of revelations that you can have beans every day and not get bored of them, and still be surprised and delighted by some of the ways they're presented. I mean, beans for Mexicans are rice. It's the equivalent of rice in some Asian cultures because it's their staple starch, I guess. Yeah.
Well, your article covers all bases that you've written for us. We'll share that in show notes. But Kendall, is it all washed down with a little shot of tequila?
If that was your thing,
yes.
When I was in Jalisco State, looking at tequila production, it was early morning, and I had to stand there and do not shots of tequila, but taste it and stuff. It's not really my thing. I think I'd probably go for a beer, and probably a Enchilada, which is beer with sort of served tequila style with salt around the rim, a bit of lime juice, but they put some Worcestershire and
chili,
Tabasco. Yeah, there's a bit of Tabasco. So it's a mix of Worcestershire, Tabasco, and something they call Maggi sauce, which is kind of close to soy. And then you put the beer on top of that, often with some ice, especially if it's a hot summer's day. And it's so refreshing. It's kind of sort of a little bit Bloody Marys, but not quite, because it's, filled with beer, but it's really great.
I'll go that, and I'll have 2 tequila shots and a margarita, thanks, and all the food you can fit on the table. Kendall, thanks so much for chatting.
Oh, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sticking with the Mexico theme, you may like to listen to our Amazing Nomads episode with Claire Anteni, who hiked the length of the US-Mexico border, taking 6 months to walk 2,000 miles.
We were really nervous. We had heard a lot, mostly from people who hadn't been there themselves. So there's a lot of sort of myths about what's down there, and we had a lot of fear going in, but we had this trust that people are kind of the same no matter where they are, and that it maybe wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. And that's overwhelmingly what we found. We really had no incidents that were even remotely dangerous or scary or anything like that.
That was a bumper episode celebrating our Mexico travel guide, and we'll share a link in show notes so you can download it. Next week, we're going rogue with a special episode on urban exploration.
Urbex. Until then, you can get the World Nomads podcast on iTunes or download the Google Podcast app. Make sure you subscribe, and if you have any feedback, it's always welcome, or suggestions for guests, get in touch with us at podcast@worldnomads.com.
See ya.
Bye.
The World Nomads Podcast. Explore your boundaries.